In a time long before the rise of Dragonlord families, before the world knew the terror and majesty of dragons, the Valyrian Peninsula was a place of untamed wilderness and raw, untapped power. The Valyrians were a people of humble beginnings, living in scattered tribes across the volcanic lands, with no single ruler to unite them. They were skilled craftsmen, miners, and sorcerers, known for their work with metals and their deep connection to the earth, but their influence was limited to their rugged homeland. Among these early Valyrians was the House of Urax, a family revered not for their wealth or might, but for their deep knowledge of the arcane. The Urax were keepers of ancient secrets, masters of fire magic, and skilled alchemists. They were respected, but in a world that valued strength and conquest, their power was limited. They could bend the flames, but they could not bend the wills of men or beasts. Valyrian Urax was born into this world, a time of small kingdoms and warring tribes, where power was determined by the strength of your sword arm and the size of your army. Valyrian's father, a renowned sorcerer, hoped to pass on the family's ancient knowledge to his son, teaching him the ways of fire and blood. But Valyrian was restless. He saw the world changing around him and felt the sting of insignificance. The kingdoms beyond Valyria were growing, becoming more organized, more powerful. Tales of the Giscari empires might reach even the remote villages of Valyria, stories of their towering cities and unstoppable legions. The Valyrians, for all their magic, were nothing compared to these empires. They were divided, scattered, and weak. And in this world, Valyrian felt powerless, trapped by the limitations of his family's magic. His frustration only grew as he watched the neighboring tribes of Valyria unite under warlords, carving out small kingdoms in the fertile lands to the east. These new rulers, though lacking in magical knowledge, wielded power through sheer force, amassing wealth and followers. The House of Urax, with all its wisdom, remained on the fringes, respected but never feared, consulted but never obeyed. Valyrian's turning point came during a rare gathering of the Valyrian tribes, a council meant to discuss the future of their people as threats from the west grew more pressing. Valyrian's father, ever the voice of caution and wisdom, proposed that the Valyrians should focus on strengthening their magical knowledge to deepen their connection with the earth and its secrets. But the warlords laughed at his words, mocking the Urax family as mere fire dancers, and spell weavers too weak to understand real power. The humiliation of that day burned deep into Valyrian's soul. He saw the truth in the warlord's eyes. Knowledge without strength was worthless. In a world where empires were built on conquest, his family's ancient magic meant nothing without the power to enforce their will. That night, Valyrian swore that he would change the fate of his family and of all Valyria. He would not be mocked. He would find a way to create a force so powerful that even the mightiest empires would tremble before it. Driven by this burning need, Valyrian threw himself into the darkest corners of his family's magic. He sought out forgotten texts, delving into the ancient lore that even his father had deemed too dangerous to explore. He became obsessed with the idea of creating a creature that could embody the very essence of fire, a being that could command the skies and dominate the earth. Valyrian's studies led him to the volcanic caves of the 14 Flames, where he discovered the fire worms, massive serpentine creatures born of the earth's molten core. These creatures were terrifying, their bodies aflame, their power unmatched by anything Valyrian had ever seen. But they were wild, uncontrollable, and mindless. To Valyrian, they represented raw, untamed power, a power that, if harnessed correctly, could change the world. But fire worms alone were not enough. Valyrian knew he needed to combine this elemental fury with a creature that could soar above the mountains, dominate the skies, and wield intelligence and strength. Thus began his dark experiments, merging the fire worms with wyverns, the fierce winged predators that roamed the mountains near Valyria. The process was grueling, filled with failures, with twisted and deformed creatures that were quickly destroyed. Yet Valyrian persisted, driven by the memory of his family's humiliation, by the fear that without power, they would be forgotten in the annals of history. And then, after years of relentless experimentation, he succeeded. From the flames of the 14, a single egg emerged, larger than any wyvern's egg, harder than stone, pulsing with life. Valyrian nurtured the egg, pouring into it all the magic and knowledge his family had accumulated over generations. When it finally hatched, the creature that emerged was unlike anything the world had ever seen. Its scales were as black as night, its wings vast enough to cover the sky, and its breath, a torrent of fire, hotter than the deepest pits of Valyria. Balerion named the creature after himself, Balerion the Black Dread. With this dragon he had created the first true weapon of mass destruction, a creature that would change the fate of the world. After years of tireless experimentation, Balerion finally stood before the creature he had dreamed of, a dragon, the first of its kind. The beast, Balerion the Black Dread, was a living embodiment of fire and fury, with scales as dark as the night and eyes that burned with an inner flame. As the dragon grew, so too did Balerion's resolve to reclaim the power and respect his family had been denied for so long. With Balerion the Black Dread by his side, Balerion Urax knew it was time to settle old scores. The memories of the Great Conclave, where his father had been humiliated and his family mocked, still burned in his mind. The warlords who had laughed at him, who had dismissed the House of Urax as weak and insignificant, would soon learn the price of their arrogance. Balerion mounted his dragon, feeling the immense power beneath him, the heat radiating from the creature's body. With a command, the Black Dread spread its vast wings, blotting out the sun as it took to the skies. The air itself seemed to tremble as the dragon flew toward the strongholds of the warlords who had once mocked him. The first target was the fortress of Kaltoros, the most powerful of the warlords. His keep, built atop a mountain overlooking the lush valleys of Valyria, had been a symbol of strength and power for generations. As Balerion approached, the warlord's soldiers looked up in terror, their faces pale as they witnessed the impossible, a creature of fire and shadow descending upon them. Balerion gave the order, and the Black Dread unleashed its fury. A torrent of fire erupted from the dragon's maw, hotter than anything the world had ever seen. The flames consumed the fortress, turning stone to ash, wood to cinders, and men to nothing but memories. The walls that had stood for centuries crumbled under the dragon's relentless assault, and within moments, the mighty fortress was reduced to a smoldering ruin. Kaltoros himself, the once proud warlord who had mocked the House of Urax, was found among the ashes, his body charred beyond recognition. Balerion watched the destruction with cold satisfaction, knowing that this was only the beginning. He and his dragon moved from one stronghold to the next, leaving a trail of devastation in their wake. The warlords who had once laughed at him now trembled in fear, their armies powerless against the might of the Black Dread. The skies of Valyria were filled with smoke as fortress after fortress fell, their proud banners consumed by the flames of Balerion's vengeance. The name Balerion, once whispered in mockery, now became synonymous with terror. The warlords who survived swore allegiance to him, their defiance broken, their power shattered. Balerion the Mad was no longer just a sorcerer, he was the first true Dragonlord, the ruler of a united Valyria forged in fire and blood. As the last of his enemies fell, Balerion returned to his family's ancestral home, where he stood amidst the ruins of the old order, a new world rising from the ashes. The House of Urax, once mocked and dismissed, was now the most powerful house in Valyria, feared and respected by all. But as Balerion looked out over the land he had conquered, he felt no joy, only a deep, lingering emptiness. The power he had sought for so long was his, but it had come at a terrible cost. The dragon he had created was a creature of destruction, and with it, he had become a man consumed by vengeance. Balerion realized that the fire he had unleashed could never be controlled. The Black Dread, his greatest creation, was both his triumph and his curse, a force that would one day consume even him. But for now, the world trembled before the House of Urax, and the legacy of Balerion the Mad was etched into the very bones of Valyria, a story of power, revenge, and the price of ambition. Balerion Urax thus became the first Dragonlord of Valyria. He had set his sights on the Targaryen stronghold of Dragonstone. As he prepared to conquer the castle with his dragon, Balerion the Black Dread, he saw Lyanna Targaryen standing defiantly on the ramparts. Intrigued by her fierce spirit, he decided to take a bold and desperate action. In a daring assault, Balerion and the Black Dread descended upon Dragonstone, unleashing fire and chaos upon the castle. Amidst the destruction, Balerion captured Lyanna, kidnapping her away from her family. As they soared through the skies, she struggled against him, fear and anger etched on her face. Balerion, however, was captivated by her strength and beauty. Initially, Lyanna despised her captor, vowing to escape and return to her family. But as days turned into weeks, she found herself drawn to Balerion's passion and determination. He showed her the power of the dragons, the depth of his ambition, and his vision for a united Valyria. Slowly, the walls she had built around her heart began to crumble, and she started to see Balerion not just as a kidnapper, but as a man of strength and vision. Their relationship evolved from animosity to understanding, and eventually, love blossomed between them. Balerion, in turn, found in Lyanna a fierce ally, someone who challenged him and shared his dreams for the future. As they forged a bond, the two worked together to unite their families, merging the power of House Urax with the legacy of House Targaryen. With their love solidified, Balerion and Lyanna longed for a child who would carry the legacy of both families. To ensure their daughter would inherit the strength of Dragonblood, Balerion knew he needed to perform a dark ritual. He prepared to sacrifice a young dragon hatchling, using its blood to infuse their unborn child with the fiery power of dragons. As the ritual unfolded, Lyanna stood by Balerion's side, her hand protectively resting on her belly. With each invocation, the air crackled with energy, and the hatchling's life force was channeled into their child. Months later, they welcomed a beautiful baby girl named Valyria into the world, her presence radiant and powerful. However, the ritual's toll was heavy. As Valyria was born, the intense heat radiating from her body surged uncontrollably, a manifestation of the dragonblood that coursed through her veins. In that moment of joy, Lyanna gasped, her eyes wide with both awe and horror as she felt the overwhelming power of their daughter. Despite the miracle of new life, the heat became unbearable. Lyanna's body, unable to withstand the force of the magic infused within Valyria, began to falter. She reached out for Balerion, her hand trembling, but the fiery energy surged around them, consuming the space. In her final moments, Lyanna whispered a heartfelt goodbye, her love for both Balerion and Valyria shining through the pain. Thus the first true Dragonblood was born, a child destined to carry the intertwined legacies of both the Urax and Targaryen lines. She would be a living embodiment of their power. A child whom no fire could burn. A legacy forged in fire and blood, destined to alter the fate of Valyria forever.